This is Jarrod Horak for the RunawayHorse.com. It's Kentucky Derby Week 2017. They haven't drawn the post positions yet. They're going to be doing that later this week. But we're getting closer to Kentucky Derby 2017. We know which horses most likely are going to be in the starting gate. And in this video, we're going to talk about some Kentucky Derby bloodlines. Plus, there is a possibility of a wet track. There's a chance of rain at Churchill Downs Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of Derby Week. So we could have a wet track. So we'll talk about the bloodlines, and we'll also talk about horses that have run well on a wet track, or horses that may run well on a wet track. Well, let's start with Classic Empire. From a pedigree standpoint, he looks solid. His sire, Pioneer of the Nile, was my Kentucky Derby horse when he ran in the Derby. But he was in the Mind That Bird year, when Mind That Bird, improbable winner that year, a Pioneer of the Nile finished second. Now, Pioneer of the Nile was the sire of American Pharaoh, the Triple Crown winner from a few years ago. So Classic Empire certainly has a nice pedigree. Cat Thief on the bottom, the dam sire, was third in the Kentucky Derby when he ran in the Derby in the 1990s. And then he also won the 1999 Breeders' Cup Classic. So Classic Empire has that nice pedigree. He has the class. He's your 2-year-old champion. And he looks like he could be a contender, and he should vie for favoritism in the Kentucky Derby this year. Now, IRAP for trainer Doug O'Neill. Doug O'Neill has saddled a couple Kentucky Derby winners. And IRAP's sire, Tisnow, he's been a good, solid sire for several years. And he was a 2-time Breeders' Cup Classic winner. And that was at a 1.25 mile distance. So we can figure that IRAP will probably like the 1.25 mile distance. And he won the Bluegrass Stakes last out, breaking his maiden in that race. Always Dreaming for trainer Todd Pletcher. His sire, Bodemeister, finished second in the Kentucky Derby a few years ago. Bodemeister's sire, Empire Maker, was also second in the Kentucky Derby. He was my top choice in 2003. And then he won the Belmont Stakes that year as well. So Always Dreaming has a nice sire and then the sire's sire. And then the dam sire, In Excess, was one of my all-time favorite horses. He won 5 graded stakes races in 1991, including the Met Mile at Belmont Park. So Always Dreaming has that nice pedigree, top and bottom, a good blend of speed with a bit of stamina in there as well. Now, Patch probably has the best pedigree in the field. His sire, Union Rags, and his dam sire, AP Indy, they were both Belmont Stakes winners. So Patch should not have any problem going 1.25 miles. He's lightly raced with only 3 starts. That's the main problem with Patch. He only has 3 lifetime starts. So it's going to be a question of, does he have enough seasoning to run his best race at this point of his career? Don't know about that, but for the long term, Patch with that pedigree is certainly one to watch. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ran a decent race in the Derby, would skip the Preakness, and then he would be a major threat in the Belmont Stakes. Irish War Cry for trainer Graham Motion. Graham Motion saddled Animal Kingdom to win the Kentucky Derby a few years back. But Irish War Cry's sire is Curlin, and Curlin sired last year's Preakness winner, Exaggerator. And Curlin himself was first in the Preakness, second in the Belmont, and third in the Kentucky Derby when he was a 3-year-old. So that nice pedigree for Irish War Cry coming out of that nice sire, and he's got a nice with the trainer angle as well. And he's bred to handle a wet track if there is a wet track. He's got that nice wet track pedigree. Now let's talk about some of the horses that have run well on a wet track before, and we'll start with Classic Empire again. On a wet track in his career debut at Churchill Downs in the slop, 4.5 furlongs, May 4th of 2016, he rallied from 5th to 1st, and he won, finishing full of run. So Classic Empire is one that he handles a wet track. He's got the nice pedigree. He's your 2-year-old champion. He's a Grade 1 winner. The only problem with Classic Empire is he had a lot of physical setbacks and mental setbacks this year, and he was only able to get 2 Derby preps in. He missed some workouts, and he could be a bit short. He lost both of those races, and he has yet to run back to that big number that he earned in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year. Now, IRAP ran once on a wet track, but he ended up finishing 4th at Santa Anita at the end of 2016, so don't know if he's really going to move up on a wet track. As I said, Irish War Cry, he is bred to handle the wet track, and he has that nice pedigree. Now, some horses that have run well on a wet track in the past, Gormley for trainer John Sheriff's, Kentucky Derby winning trainer John Sheriff's. He won the Grade 3 Sham Stakes in the slop at Santa Anita back in January of this year. Taprit for trainer Todd Pletcher, he won the Pulpit Stakes at Gulfstream Park in the slop last December. Hentz for trainer Steve Asmussen, he broke his maiden at 1 mile in the 16th at Oaklawn Park in the slop in January. Battle of Midway for trainer Jerry Hollendorfer, He broke his maiden at 6 furlongs on a wet track at Santa Anita in January. That was a nice win. Untrapped for trainer Steve Asmussen was second in the Grade 3 LeCompte in the mud at Fairgrounds in January. And then Looking at Lee, another one for Steve Asmussen. He ended up finishing second in the Grade 3 Iroquois at Churchill Downs last September. So those are the horses with the decent pedigrees. I think the best pedigrees in the race. Also horses that have run well on a wet track. Now if you're interested in my full card analysis for Churchill Downs Kentucky Derby Day 2017, go over to therunawayhorse.com, click on my full card sales page. There you will find my 2017 Kentucky Derby full card from Churchill Downs later this week. And if you're interested in joining my email list, I send free full cards the final Friday of every month at Santa Anita, and some other specials and free full cards as well. If you're interested in that, you can join my email list at therunawayhorse2013@gmail.com. I have exclusive deals for Runaway Horse purchasers. So if you're interested in that, email me at therunawayhorse2013@gmail.com. That will wrap up this week's video. We'll be back next week to recap 2017 Kentucky Derby.